Friends, you may be seated. In just a moment, we're going to begin the service for Mr. Edwin Horak of blessed memory. Just as a gentle reminder, if anybody has a cell phone, please take a moment to turn it on silent. On behalf of the family, I also want to thank those of us who are joining via live stream. Officiating today's service will be Rabbi Eliezer Grunberg.
Ashri hoish asher halach ba'atzas v'sham uv'derech hatam ilo amad uv'moshav leitzim lo yashav ki im besaras adonai chevtza v'tzarasa yegu yamam v'loyla v'hoya k'eit shasval apalgemoyim asher piryo yitim be'ito v'oleu lo yibo v'chalashaya asa yatzliach lo yichein harisham ki im kamois asher tidfenu ruach akein lo yakumu risham b'mishpat v'chatam ba'adas tzadikim ki yodea adonai derech tzadikim v'derech risham toived. Happy is the one who has not followed the counsel of the wicked, nor stood in the path of sinners, nor sat in the company of the scornful. Rather, that one's delight is in the Torah of the Lord, meditating in God's Torah day and night, and will be like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in season, whose leaf will not wither. And whatever that one does prospers. Not so the wicked, who are like chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore the wicked shall not survive judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord loves the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked is doomed. A song of David, Lord, who may sojourn in your tent, who may dwell on your holy mountain. One who walks in purity, does what is righteous, and speaks the truth from the heart, who has no slander on the tongue, nor has done harm to a fellow, nor cast disgrace towards a neighbor, in whose eyes a contemptible person is repulsive, but who honors those who are in the awe of the Lord, who swears truthfully even to personal hurt and never retracts, who does not lend money on interest, nor takes a bribe against the innocent. One who does these things shall never falter. We are here today to pay our last respects to Edwin M. Horak, Eliakim Michal ben Avraham of blessed memory, father of Diane, Scylla, and Stephen, and his wife Lena, Silbern Scott, grandfather, proud grandfather of Joseph Horak, Meirav Horak, Cameron Scylla, Eli Horak, Lauren Scott, and Andrew Scott, and brother-in-law of Marvin Harris. I was on the phone last night with Steve and Diane and Lena to find out a little bit about their father. I did not know him, and the truth is I only know Stephen for just a number of months. I'm not a renter rabbi. In those few months that Steve started to attend our shul in Buffalo Grove, we developed a close relationship already. And the truth is, Rabbi Karsh, who we studied with for many years, would have really been doing the service today, but he is not in town. And it's a privilege for me to be here with you at this time. I asked the family to share with me a little bit about their father, some attributes, some character traits that stood out. And the reason being, not because I needed just to have something to say today as the officiating rabbi, but our rabbis tell us we come to a funeral and eulogies are given, and there's a very important, more than one purpose in the eulogies. King Solomon actually made a statement that it's better to go to a house of a mourner, to a funeral, than to go to a joyous occasion like a wedding. Sounds like a strange statement. Who wants to attend a funeral? We'd rather be dancing at weddings. And that is true, and that's what we pray for. But on the other hand, going to a funeral, going to the house of a mourner, is something that puts life in front of us, gives us a perspective, a lesson in the importance of life and what is truly important in life and what we are here for in this world. And therefore our rabbis tell us that one of the main purposes of a eulogy is to awaken the listeners and the one speaking himself to realize the purpose of life in this world is really to prepare for the true life in the world to come, to take advantage of the important things in life, of living a meaningful life, a life of good deeds, a godly life, a spiritual life. In addition, by hearing about the accomplishments and the good deeds of the one who has passed. Those who are here will learn. We will learn from his ways, and that will be a merit for him in the world of truth. When one passes on from this world, they themselves can no longer do their own acts of good deeds. But those, the family that lives on in this world, could do things that will perpetuate his memory and serve as a merit for him in the world to come. I'm sure we will be seeing Steve on a regular basis now to say Kaddish in memory of his father. But we take this opportunity to learn a little bit about the life of Edwin and things that we could take away to learn from, to grow from, and that will serve as a merit for him. I think there's never a good time for a funeral, but there's no better time than these days. Just a little in over a week will be Rosh Hashanah, the day of judgment. And this idea of recognizing the purpose of life, recognizing that there's a day of judgment, there's the ultimate day of judgment when one passes on, but we have to make a reckoning every day, and once a year we have Rosh Hashanah, the day of judgment, as the days of Elul come to a close. And therefore, what we could take from here and walk away with more of a perspective on what the importance of life is, and maybe to focus on a few good deeds of Edwin that we could learn from, will not only serve as a merit for him, but will serve as a merit for us as we go into the high holidays. The family will speak a little bit more about his life in general, but there were three attributes that I heard last night on the phone with the family I just wanted to touch on, and to show how these attributes are so important in Judaism, in the perspective of the Torah, and from God's point of view. They told me about his honesty in business. He was a loyal. He worked for the same company for many, many years. He was a hard worker, but he was incredibly honest in business, making sure not to cheat anyone, being honest with all the people he dealt with, being upfront with them and open, a tremendous honesty in business. The second thing was, they really said this one first, I'm going to say it second though, that family was most important. The most important thing to him was family. He would constantly be asking about the grandchildren, other family. Steve told me when he would visit them on a regular basis, it was always about how is this one doing. And it wasn't just how is this one doing, but he wanted to know details. He wanted to know in detail what was going on in their lives. And as Diane said, that their father would tell them that family is the most important thing, and all he wanted was that the children and grandchildren should get along with each other, should speak to each other, should love each other. And I think this today is something which is so greatly important, unfortunately. And then the third thing was how he mentored people. He felt an obligation with his experience and with his wisdom to give it over to others, to mentor people in business, and to give over to his children and to his grandchildren. It was so beautiful, as Diane, I think, said, he would have talks that he would call Zaidi talks, to sit down with his grandchildren, especially at points in their life of transitioning from high school to college, calling them on the phone to find out how they're doing, but sitting down to talk to them, giving them, imparting to them his wisdom and what he could teach them. Just very quickly, I want to show you how important these three character traits are. And as Jews, we always look, we read the Torah portion every Shabbos, and nothing is a coincidence. And we could look at last week's Torah portion, next week's Torah portion. We're going to go with last week's Torah portion, though today is Thursday. It's already closer to this week's Shabbos, but he passed away on Tuesday, which is still connected to last week's Shabbos. And last week's Torah portion, when you told me about his honesty in business, that was very clear in last week's Torah portion. Towards the end, the Torah tells us specifically about not cheating in business and not having weights that are not proper. In those days, they had scales. Today, it might be different tools. But not to cheat in business, to be totally honest with your customers, with your clients, in all of your business dealings. And the Torah actually says, "Leman yarichu yomecha al hadama, asher Hashem Elokecha nosein lach," that the reward for that is long life, lengthy life, for being honest in business. And it's so important, Rav Hirsch writes, that the duration of your political existence on your own soil, the Jewish people's existence, especially in the land of Israel, depends on pure honesty and fairness in business dealings, which your God requires of you and which must be a basic trait of your national character. This is a trait of what it means to be a true Jew. And the Torah actually says that one who is not honest in business, it calls it in last week's Torah portion a to'eva. It's abominable. It's something which is disgusted by God. It's a very strong word. The Torah uses that by immorality, by illicit relations. And yet the Torah is comparing that what it means to be dishonest. The Torah tells us, midvar sheker tirchak. Don't just be honest, but from something which is a lie, something which even has a shmek, as we say, a smell of dishonesty, to distance yourself from it. What's very interesting is our rabbis tell us, when one passes on, one comes up to the world of truth and has to give a reckoning, as we say. And according to one Talmudic passage, the very first question that is asked is, were you honest in your business dealings? And the family could testify that Edwin can answer that question today. Family being most important, everyone getting along, such an important lesson for this day and age, unfortunately. In last week's Torah portion, the Torah tells us, "Lo tetayev Edomi ki achichahu." Don't distance the Edomites, because they're your brothers. The Edomites came from Esav, Jacob's twin brother, but an arch enemy of Jacob and the Jewish people. The Edomites, when we were passing in the desert on our way, travels from Egypt to the land of Israel, they would not let us pass through their land. They threatened us with the sword. They wouldn't even let us pass through their land. The natural feelings would be to distance such people from us. Yet the Torah tells us, although they maybe have not acted with you like brothers, but ki achichahu, they are your brothers, and therefore we should nevertheless treat them like brothers. They also descend from Abraham and Isaac. They are the cousins of the Jewish people, and therefore we have to treat them like brothers, even if they are not treating us like that. And this was Edwin's message to his family, to always love each other, care about each other. We sometimes have to overlook or reconcile and make up. Things happen. But family is the most important. As one of the commentaries say, and from this passage in last week's Torah portion, we learn this mitzvah, this commandment of bringing our family close. In general, last week's Torah portion dealt with family life and marriage and who a Jew is allowed to marry and not marry, and the whole idea of building a family. And some of the commentaries point out that it's interesting that this book that we're reading now is at the end of Moses' life before they go into the land of Israel. The general picture is really about the congregation as a whole, public life, and laws that relate to the king, and them leading a life in the land of Israel. And maybe this seems, marriage and family life maybe seems a little bit out of place. There's maybe other places in the Torah that it could have been put. But in essence, family life is the key to society in general, to a productive society, to a society with values, and especially to the nation of Israel. Family is the most important and the basic foundation. In terms of mentoring others, something that it sounds like he had a passion to do, a love to do, helping other people, training other people, and giving over his wisdom. The Torah tells us we have to honor an elder because they have experience in life, they have wisdom that they can give over to the younger generation. In last week's Torah portion, the Torah tells us you shall not see the donkey of your brother or his ox falling on the way and not pay attention to them. You see someone traveling, you have to change it for today's day and age, but someone traveling with his donkey or his ox and the animal is suffering from the load. You have to stop to help him. alleviate the pain of the animal. And as Rav Simcha Zissel, a great rabbi, pointed out, that here the Torah is telling us we can't cause even temporary pain to an animal. Surely, pain that lasts for a while, but how much greater is the obligation towards people? If that's our feelings that we have to have towards animals, how much greater is our feelings towards people? How to try to alleviate their pain. And if the Torah is telling us in the negative sense, how much more so in the positive sense, what an awesome and great thing it is to try to go out of our way to help people, to build people, to help them grow. And if this is talking about not only in helping them in materialistic things or physical things, how much more so to be able to give them over life lessons and wisdom to help them with things that are going to ensure that their life is going to be better, they're going to have the skills, etc. And how much more so if we could help people in a spiritual sense. This is the Torah's view on what it means to mentor others and to help others. These are some of the traits, I'm sure the family, and when we listen to them, we could see what else we could take away. But this is the point of giving a eulogy, what we could learn and take away from the life of Edwin. I think these 3 points, honesty in business, family is most important, helping and mentoring others is something that we see that God holds in great value. It should be a merit for the soul of Yaakov Michal ben Avraham, and these are things that we should try to work on. Maybe we could walk away today to improve a little bit in these areas as we go into our own day of judgment, and it will serve as a great merit for his soul. This time I want to call upon his granddaughter, Ellie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Okay. I'm going to read a little bit about my grandfather's life from my dad's perspective, so just bear with me. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Rabbi, thank you for everything you said. So things about my Zaidi from my dad's perspective. For starters, my father was born to my grandmother Mildred along with my great-grandparents. She raised him as a single mother in the late 1930s, and he always said that since his dad wasn't around, that it was hard for him to know what a dad was supposed to do. My father always spoke about how little money they had and how difficult life was, but how loved he felt. When my grandmother married a man named Lou Cohen, my father grew very closely to him and became very influential to them. The only other family he had was with his Uncle Henry, Uncle Adolf, and Tante Florence, and Cousin Mickey. While there weren't many of them, he loved each of them dearly, and they greatly impacted him and helped shape the person he would become. My father was very funny, and not in the way you usually think of, but in the small quirks that made him unique. One instance in particular is the pristine nature in which he kept his belongings. I found my dad's varsity sweater in his closet, and it was as perfect as can be considering it was 65 years old. His National Geographic collection, his little airplane liquor bottles collection, his extensive collection of little soaps and shampoos from thousands of hotels that they stayed at. They were indexed in proper order. My dad also loved coupons, and he would clip them and have them in tiny little neat piles. He would have them by food and destination, and his nephew Floyd told me that no one got more out of an entertainment book than my dad. These little details that at times drove us crazy are some of the things that we will miss the most. My dad met my mother at a young age, and somewhere in their late teens, they were married around 18 years old. If I'm not mistaken, their story goes that he was too young, so his mother had to sign papers to allow them to get married. How can I describe my parents' relationship but that they were yin and yang? They were so close but loved to argue. One thing that they could agree on was their love for travel. They ate at the finest restaurants, saw all the wonders of the world from Japan to Australia and everywhere in between. They went on cruises and saw amazing sights, and my mom did not know that he was younger as my dad graduated in 3 years from high school. Mom and dad had over 60 years of marriage, and they loved each other, but they had no problem arguing in front of anyone. They could not have loved their children anymore, and while I might have been my mom's favorite, my dad adored his Diane. Their relationship was always sound, and my sister could do no wrong, and he loved her and always enjoyed her company. I want to thank my sister for her love and support throughout everything. We, as a unit, got him through the last 6 years with little disagreement and true kindness to each other. Thank you. After my mom passing, my dad seemed to be lost, and my son Joey said that he believed that losing her was a catalyst for teshuvah, repentance, and pushing him to grow closer to the ones he loved. And the last 6 years was kind and only worried about what would become of his family if he were no longer there. Every time I saw him, he'd start the conversation by asking how my wife Lena was and how each of my kids were doing. Beyond anything, he wanted to make sure that they were okay and going to stay that way. One second. My father also excelled in his career, truly loving what he did. He got a degree in engineering from the University of Illinois. Early on in his career, he moved from strictly engineering and working in sales. He even got some of his concept patented. He worked tirelessly, often being gone for 4 to 5 nights a week, traveling internationally to do his job. My mother supported him through this and often through company parties and was warm and welcoming. They made a great team, and my dad made so many friends from work. I remember going to dinner with many Frenchmen and other workers. He loved to mentor people. I think in the end, my dad's favorite was who I call his bonus son, Kurt Carlson. Kurt was a few years older than me, but he and Dad struck up a great friendship lasting over 40 years. While he loved me, Dad liked Kurt more. Kurt and his wife, Suzanne, had the best relationship with my parents, and I cannot thank them enough for spending the time with him, making sure he got his COVID shots, and being a true friend to him and my mother. Kurt and Suzanne took care of him in Scottsdale and came to visit him a few times this year. Dad and Kurt loved golf, and they loved going to Illinois. They loved good wine and steaks. Only a few people saw Dad during his final days, and Kurt and Suzanne saw him twice. He lit up when he saw them, and even though he was non-responsive almost 24 hours a day, Kurt and Suzanne even changed their plans to be here today when they live in Phoenix, so I want to say thank you. The single most important part of my dad is that he loved having a family and spent many years spending time with them. To the day he became ill, he spoke to my Uncle Marvin a few times a week. Being an only child himself, he loved that he married into a large family and greatly loved all of his in-laws. He had close relationships with my Uncle Eddie and Aunt Lil and my Aunt Rosalie, whom my parents lived next to in Scottsdale and would have coffee every morning with. Well, they were there for numerous years. He loved his nephew Floyd and find a way to save him money. Loved the way he would save him money and find him a good deal in the relationship that they shared. He loved nothing more than talking to close friends and family on the phone and making sure always to catch up with people when he had the chance. The last 2 months, he was not conscious most of the time. When they sent him to hospice, they thought he would never gain consciousness, but somehow he did. One day when he was barely awake for a few minutes, my daughter Mayrav came to see him. He perked up and said those 5 magic words, "Do you have a job?" He simply wanted his family to be safe and have the means to support themselves after he passed. The same was true when he spoke to my stepson Drew last Friday, and he said he was sorry that he hadn't spoken to him sooner and hoped that he was doing well. In Israel, which is right before he got sick. Dad and I never saw eye to eye, and I lived life in a different manner, but nevertheless, he loved me. It was not until my mom passed away that I got to really understand him and be friends, and not just my dad, who I loved. I was his companion for 3 of the last 5 years of his life, and Joey, my son, and Morgan, who he always called Monroe, was his other companion for the 2 years he was in Scottsdale during COVID. Dad's favorite thing was to watch old westerns, Star Trek, and tell me stories about the actors. We watched the Bears and the Cubs games and ate most nights together. Fox News was always on as well as for most of the day. And he even once told Len and I that Joe Biden was an a-hole. He had a special relationship with each of his grandchildren. Both him and my mom identified with being a Bubby and a Zadie, as both of them had it on their license plates. I think he was closest with Joey as they lived together, and he also got to live with Marav and Ellie when moving back to Chicago. He was lucky enough to be able to see Cameron grow up and would like to tell the other kids that you should be more like Cameron. He had such love for each of them, but the one thing he wanted was to know that his family was okay and that they would be okay after he had gone. Mom and Dad educated my children, and they have helped Cameron with his education, and they have made sure that I was okay after I was injured 9 years ago and have allowed me to live my life. Dad approved of Lena, Drew, and Lauren too, and he loved them and took great pride in Drew being in the Israeli military and Lauren becoming a doctor. Now you have to become a doctor. He loved all the jobs Cameron did and how he had such a bright future ahead of him, and he loved that Joey was a pilot and took great pride in Mirav's journey. He loved talking to Ellie and liked to call her Spritzy behind her back because she had so much life to her, alluding to her bubbly, I'm gonna cry, her bubbly firecracker spirit. Each child was special, and he called them every week to establish a relationship. Dad also loved Lena, and he loved her cooking, and while he would say, when I cooked, I was missing something, he thought Lena did a better job and rarely said it needed something. Guess it was okay for Jewish meat. Thank you to Lena for the constant support and love. Dad and I would have not been able to get through this year without you. Dad missed my mom. When I got back from Israel, he was having delusions and could not wake up. He thought my mom was still with him, and he would imagine that she was there and talk to her and my son Joey. At least he was surrounded by people who he loved and loved him. My dad had several phrases in which several people would repeat, so I'm gonna repeat some of them, and you can laugh at your favorite one. The lox was excellent, but the fish was decent. Trust, but verify. Order the bigger meal, I got a coupon. Jerry, will you please? Bug off. Shit. And last but not least, my favorite. You always need to help yourself before you can help others. My dad asked to be buried with a few things, a few of his little bottles of whiskey he collected from his 40 years of travel, a golf club, a few golf balls, and the remains of his pets. Tootsie is there as well, and my dog Sammy Jr., and I have held Kino's ashes until now, and his pets will all be with him. Now, Dad loved his dogs. When I got tea, Dad would eat chips with her and Kino and give them a chip with sour cream and then one for himself. He would sit outside with them and smoke cigars. My dad loved to dance, and we referred to him as Crazy Legs Eddie. He liked Frank Sinatra and all types of jazz, even Bob Dylan, aka Bob Dylan. He just said that to be cool. In the end, he left a good family. I think that is what he wanted to do. We are safe and we are secure, and he did his job even without knowing what a dad was supposed to do. Now I'm going to read a little bit about, just from my perspective. So much sadness fills my heart today. However, I feel a great sense of peace in knowing that Zadie is no longer struggling. Over the past year, I was lucky enough to live closer to family, and I was able to spend lots of quality time with Zadie. I'm just gonna go off script. We used to play Rummy Cube a lot, which is our favorite game, and he always would say that I was a worthy opponent, even though he would basically win almost every time, even up until the end. The last time that we were together, we had gone out for, quote, one of the best hot dogs you can get in Chicago, which was just Portillo's, and simply enjoyed each other's company. I'm grateful for the laughs that we shared and for the last time that we were together that we just sat and played for hours. I'd like us all to remember him as the fun-loving, witty person we all loved, with a crooked smile on his face and a slick response waiting, prepared for any moment. Thank you for being the best Sadie and for always giving me advice, whether I asked for it or not. I will miss the way you always used to tease me to toughen me up, and the way I simply just smiled back at you knowing it was because you loved me. Which in return would only frustrate him more because he was trying to piss me off. And, why isn't it pissing you? I'm trying to piss you off, and you just keep that smile on your face? Some memories us grandkids all share is before leaving Bubby and Zadie's house, he would pull out a big jar of coins and tell us, whatever you can fit your hand and pull out, you can have. He loved sharing a meal with all of us individually so we would have quality time with him so he could get to know us and understand us deeper. I'm grateful for the many phone calls starting with, "That's my favorite youngest granddaughter," even though I'm his only youngest granddaughter, which obviously differed and was tweaked for each grandchild. Thank you for all the life lessons and for loving all of us as much as you did. You taught us that family is the most important thing, and that at the end of the day, that's all we have. You will be dearly missed. Love you always, Tracy. Thank you.
Call up his grandson, Cameron.
Thank you, Ellie and Steve. Thank you, Rabbi, and more importantly, thank all of you for taking the time to come here and celebrate Ed's life. I wasn't too many years ago where he was standing where I am, and we were celebrating the life of my Bubby and his wife, and I'm proud to be able to be here and speak on his behalf. I spent a lot of time thinking about what I was going to say because I'm not a script person. I felt it was important to try to boil down what was important about my Zadie to me. And I think if there's one thing that he did is he set an example for all of us. He was a fantastic example of a patriarch, not just by being the oldest man in our family, but by setting a very clear example and encouraging all of us to follow the things that he was able to do for himself. He pushed all of us grandchildren to pursue an education, and not just an education, but pursue things that interested us. He pushed us to become deeper and better people. And he gave us the gift of his humor and his company all the time. As Ellie brought up, some of the simpler times spent with Zadie, like getting hot dogs, were the most important. I think some of the most special things he had to offer were when there wasn't something to distract. My favorite memories of him were very much the small talk that we shared. And that's probably what I'm going to miss the most, is the short phone calls or the lunches out, and the example that he set for all of us. But I think one of the greatest blessings that we have is that in the time that we had with him, I think a lot of people here have absorbed a lot of what he represented. So as long as we continue to carry those things on with us, he's still with us. Thank you.
Call up his daughter, Diane.
I want you all to know that I see each and every one of you. And I thank you for being here on the behalf of my family and my father. I know he's here with us right now. And he probably would say, make sure that you celebrate my life, have a couple drinks, make sure there's enough liquor for all of us to go around. And I hope that later today and the coming days that you will all have a drink to celebrate my father's life. A few years back, I wrote a birthday speech for my dad's birthday. I would like to read it, as it will explain who my father was to me. But first, I would like to share a beautiful story of two hearts reuniting. After visiting Dad on Monday, I came home, ate dinner, turned on a movie to relax. It was the Elvis movie, my brother's favorite. I opened my balcony doors and enjoyed the outside air. It was cooler than normal evening. All of a sudden, I smelled perfume. For those of you who know me, you know I can't stand the smell of perfume and do not wear it at all. The smell wouldn't go away. So I got up and went on my balcony to see who could possibly be wearing perfume that strong to leak into my apartment. Nothing. No one else was on their balcony and no one around. It seemed that the smell was gone when I went outside. Odd, but I ignored it and came back in to watch my movie. About 5 minutes or so passed, and the perfume smell came back again, even stronger. I couldn't understand what was happening and where it was coming from, and then all of a sudden it hit me. It was the smell of my mom's perfume. As soon as I realized that, the smell disappeared, and I just let it go. I was so tired and just didn't think too much of it until the next morning when I got the call that Dad passed over. At that point, I knew it was my mom who came to tell me that everything was going to be all right, and she was coming to get him to be reunited once again. It has made these last few days bearable, knowing that they are together once again. This is my father's, what I wrote to him for his birthday celebration that we had with family and just a few friends of his a couple years back. On your birthday celebration, you have asked all of us to share a funny story or memory. Well, being hard-headed like my father, I decided to do it my way, and instead to share with you how much you mean to me and how much you have taught me in my life. Some of it will be funny, some of it will be heartfelt. One of my first memories is making you lunch to take to work. I remember going into the refrigerator and finding everything I possibly could to put on a sandwich for you. It was piled high. It was my rendition of a Dagwood sandwich, which I remember from the cartoon Blondie. I had a sense of pride to make you these sandwiches, but who knew if you ever ate them, because I have no idea what I put on them. My dad loved to take us on vacations. We would drive everywhere from Key West to California. We stopped at every tourist attraction there was, and whether we wanted to or not, all my brother and I wanted to do was get to the hotel and jump into the pool. When we acted up in the car, we lost minutes or hours of pool time. But by the time we got to the pool, we miraculously earned back all of our pool time. I think my parents were just done with us and needed a break. But I remember it taking so long to get to the hotel because my father would get lost and try to figure it out the old-fashioned way by looking at a map, never wanting to ask for directions. Dad, you gave me my love to travel. But thank goodness for Google Maps now. I remember the first car that my parents bought me for graduating college, a Toyota Corolla SR5. Dad took me to go pick out the car. I wanted a stick shift. However, I didn't know how to drive a stick shift. The ride home was long and frustrating on both of our parts. Dad loved to talk to people. He likes to find out what people are all about. I remember at weddings or bar mitzvahs, he would tell me who he sat down and had a chat with. He is always interested in what people are about. Dad, this showed me how to talk with people, how to be friendly and curious on what people had to say. Dad worked for one company his entire career. It taught me to have a sense of commitment to a job. He loved to teach and train his employees. Dad, I have followed in your footsteps by staying in positions for long periods of time and also loved to teach. I learned from watching you. Dad, you taught me an appreciation of money. However, I'm not as crazy using coupons as you are. I remember when you wrote the last check for your house in Skokie. You showed me the check saying this was the largest check you ever wrote. You were so proud to have paid off that house. When I paid my last mortgage for River Forest House, I thought of you and could feel that sense of accomplishment as you did. Dad and I have always had a special relationship. I think my dad would tell you that I am possibly the only person that can call him an asshole, and for him not to get angry. I think you know I mean it in the most loving sense, Dad. You allow me to be myself, to speak freely, and you're always there to listen. Even as a teenager, when I was just possibly, was straying too far, you would sit me down and talk to me about life lessons. I may not have always listened to you, but believe me, I heard you. Dad, you told me a few weeks ago, this was then, that you feel you have had a charmed life. You are grateful for all that you have been given. Not many people could or would say this about their life. I'm grateful for you and all that you have taught me. You see, Dad, it is not always in the things you say or the time you have given. It is the simple ways, through watching someone live, work, play, that I have learned. Happy birthday, Dad. I'm glad to be celebrating you. I love you, Daddy. Rest in peace now, Dad. Enjoy playing golf again, drinking as much as you'd like, and being reunited with Mom again.
Diane just touched upon another character trait of her dad, of being grateful. In the beginning of this week's coming Torah portion, the Torah tells us about the mitzvah of bikurim, of bringing the first fruits. A farmer would bring the first fruits of his crop to the temple and present it to the Kohen. And part of that process was making a declaration of thanking, of showing gratitude to God. And not just for the fruits themselves, but going back into the history of the Jewish people, all the way back, and how one thing leads to a next, and everything is part of God's plan, and the recognition, though the farmer might have worked himself and toiled to produce these fruits, in essence, it's all a gift from God. And at this time, this is another lesson we could learn. I'm sure the family is grateful for having such a father that taught them such important lessons. And at this time, recognize that that was a gift from God himself. And everything we have in life comes from God. Everything is planned by God. Even situations like this of sorrow and grief and life, it's all part of God's plan. We have to recognize that, show him our gratitude. And I hope everyone today walks away inspired by the life of Eliakim, Michal ben Avram. Take some lessons away that we could learn, and the importance of life itself. We're here for a short period of time. We have to make the most of it. Mizmor leDavid Adonai roi lo echsar, binois deshe yar bitzeni, amei menuchos inahaleni. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'maglei tzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech b'geit samoves lo ira ra ki ato imodi. Shiftecho meshantecho hema yenachamuni. Taroch lefonai shulcha neged zoreroi. Tishanto Vashem en roshi kosi rivoyo. Achtoi v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai. V'shavti beveis Adonai li'oirech yomim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Either I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, and my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. El malei rachamim shoichem b'amroimim hamtzei menucha nechoyna al kanfei hashrichina b'malois kidoshim utahorim kizor harakia masirim es nishmas el Yaakov Michal ben Avram shalach lo elamoi ba'avur shenoidvim tzedaka ba'askaras nishmasoi b'gan eden tei menuchasoi l'chem bala rachamim yastireu b'seisel knafav li'olamim b'yitzror b'tzror hachayim es nishmasoi Adonai hu nachal asav yanuach al mishkavoi b'shalom v'noimar amen. O God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of thy presence, among the holy and pure who shine as the brightness of the firmament unto the soul of Edwin M. Horak, al Yaakov Michal ben Avram, who has gone unto eternity. Lord of mercy, bring him under the cover of thy wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be God's possession, and his repose be peace. Amen.
Friends, this does conclude our service here in the chapel today. The term will take immediately at the family plot at Waldheim Cemetery. Following the interment, the family will be sitting Shiva both at the Tamarisk in Deerfield as well as the Horak residence in Buffalo Grove. The information and the times are inside the service folder that you received on the way in. If you did not get one, they are available on the way out. For those who are watching online, that information is on the website. Additionally, memorial contributions in Edwin's memory to Jewish Child and Family Services and to the Ark. For those of you going in procession with the family to the cemetery today, please make sure you obtain an orange funeral safety sticker. That sticker should be placed in the front passenger side of your windshield. We would also ask that you have your bright headlights and flashing hazard lights on at all times. For an additional measure of safety, our staff will be placing magnetic flags on tops of the vehicles throughout the procession. As we drive in procession today, please drive as close as safety permits to the vehicle in front of you at all times, as we want to avoid any large spaces or gaps in the procession, particularly as we go through the intersection. The following individuals have been selected to serve as pallbearers. Some of you are here as pallbearers, some of you are being honored as we call your names. When I call your name, please rise and stand next to the casket. Joey Horak, Cameron Silla, Drew Silberman, Mark Silberman, Floyd Kozak, Daryl Harris, Robert Harris, David Marcus, David Harris, Kurt Carlson, Ben Lesham, Danny Koval, and Jeff Album. At this time, I'd ask everyone to please rise as we escort the casket, the pallbearer, and the rabbi, as well as the family, from the chapel. Family, I'm asking you to follow me. Friends, for those of you who are going in procession, we ask you to go immediately to your car. Secretary schedule